Thank you very much, and apologies for keeping you waiting. I'm still factoring into my schedule the walk from Madison Avenue. Before I start on Asia and the Pacific region, the disasters there, let me just add my condemnation to that of the Secretary General about the murderous attacks on WFP staff, World Food Programme staff in Pakistan yesterday. We mourn the loss of 5 valuable colleagues, national and international staff, and condemn utterly those who carried out the attack. They did not in any sense deserve such treatment. They are there simply to help the people of Pakistan by providing emergency relief. Neither they nor the humanitarian operation nor the people of Pakistan needed this kind of extra problem and risk as they struggled to deal with the humanitarian consequences of the conflict there. It goes without saying that relief doesn't come with religious or political or other labels. It's simply relief in terms of food or water or medical care or emergency shelter or whatever it is, and is welcome to the people, whoever they are, who receive it and who need it. So I just wanted to make clear my point of view on that. If we turn to the disasters in the Asia and Pacific, which I briefed you on at the end of last week, I just wanted to update the situation, which has already moved on in some respects in different countries. We've got obviously the problems in the Philippines. We've launched a flash appeal there, and I'll come to that in a minute. We have the major earthquake in western Sumatra in Indonesia, which is obviously a major relief effort there. We have the tsunami in Samoa and Tonga and American Samoa. There was also been, I should have mentioned the other day, an earthquake in Bhutan, which is causing problems there, and of course there are currently very, very serious and dramatic floods in India as well. So this is really a very bad time for this region, for different reasons, different disasters not linked to each other, but coming together in time in a particularly tragic way. In some of these disasters, the rescue phase is coming to an end, and people are beginning to assess what's going to be needed to rebuild and to reconstruct. But meanwhile, the emergency relief phase, if I can call it that, will obviously last for weeks and months while we help people to survive and to begin to recover. To start with the Philippines, we launched in Geneva today a flash appeal for $74 million for the enormous flooding which was caused by Tropical Storm Ketsana there 2 weeks ago. This is the largest flash appeal I think we've ever launched for the Philippines, which is no stranger to disasters and certainly no stranger to floods. It requests funds for projects in 13 different sectors, particularly obviously food, water and sanitation, emergency shelter and emergency health issues as well. To help that appeal and to jumpstart the international response, I've already authorised an allocation of $7 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund, from SURF, for projects in the appeal, and we've already got, I think, some $9 or $10 million towards the appeal already. Of course, there are many governments in the region and more widely, and not least the US government, for example, helping in different ways in addition to the UN efforts. The latest figures we have for Tropical Storm Ketsana are that it affected up to 4 million people altogether. There are still some 336,000 displaced in evacuation centres, almost 300 people killed, around 40 people missing, and almost 40,000 houses either destroyed or badly damaged. Of course, as I said the other day, Typhoon Ketsana also affected very badly Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia, where assessment is still going on in those countries, but there have been deaths and destruction on a significant scale. So far we have not received any requests for help, international help from those countries, but that's not excluded in the future as the situation evolves there. When we last met, we were particularly concerned about the potential impact of Typhoon Palma on the Philippines, which was heading for the flood-affected areas at that particular point and was even described as a super typhoon, Category 4 or Category 5. In the end, luckily, it changed course to some extent, and weakened to some extent, hit the northern tip of the Philippines, where it's caused significant deaths and destruction. I think 16 deaths, 2 missing, and has affected up to 400,000 people, including a lot of people, again, displaced in evacuation centres, a lot of infrastructure damaged or closed because of water or debris. But thankfully it did not hit too badly the already badly affected areas, as we had feared it might, and the overall impact was somewhat less than we had feared. The situation on the ground is still difficult in the main affected areas. Heavy rain in some places is still continuing, which is affecting relief operations. There is a serious risk of communicable diseases, as always, with flooding and lack of clean water. For example, diarrhea, respiratory infections, skin diseases. A lot of people are still, I say, not been able to return home, and some are even still in their flooded houses, in the top areas of their flooded houses. We have a lot of debris and infrastructure which is still damaged. If we turn next to the situation in Indonesia and the hurricane which hit earthquake which hit Western Sumatra almost a week ago now. The latest figures I have are the official death toll is 608, with another 434 missing. But of course, as you'll be aware, this is very much still an incomplete figure and is likely to rise further. As those who are still buried under rubble, the bodies are recovered, and the damage and deaths are properly assessed in some of the remote villages, which are also very badly affected. Some 90,000 houses are destroyed or severely damaged, as well as, of course, key infrastructure, hospitals, schools, public buildings of various kinds. The search and rescue phase has been declared over by the government. There were a large number of search and rescue teams, both nationally and internationally, on the spot, and their efforts have not entirely stopped, but that essentially their focus is moving from search and rescue to emergency relief and eventually to recovery and reconstruction too. A lot of work is going on to rescue bodies from under collapsed buildings. Again, there are heavy rains and continuing landslides in the area because of the aftermath of the earthquake and the impact of rain on newly exposed earth. There are several villages which have been buried because of landslides, and I guess you will have seen the media coverage suggesting that there are still areas which have not properly been reached by anybody yet, certainly not by significant relief items because of the difficulty of infrastructure and damage. We're working with the government on what we need to do next, whether they would like some help from the Central Emergency Response Fund, whether there'll be some kind of action plan for the future. But meanwhile, again, regional and international governments are helping. UN agencies and NGOs are on the ground and helping, and we're there trying to coordinate the efforts in support of the government as much as we can on the spot there. Finally, let me just briefly update you on the situation in Samoa, if I can find the right piece of paper. There are so many of these things, unfortunately. The latest figures we have, again, are a total of 137 deaths in Samoa, with 310 injured and 3,200 homeless, and 9 deaths in Tonga, as well as the deaths in American Samoa as well. The situation has now been downgraded by the authorities from a disaster to an emergency, and the relief efforts are particularly focused on the southern coast of Upolu in Samoa, which is the worst affected area, with 20 out of the 40 villages there reportedly more or less destroyed. The government has estimated the total damage at $150 million, and again the shift of focus is from rescue to emergency relief and early recovery planning. Water, shelter, clothing and sanitation are the key relief priorities both for Samoa and Tonga. We've got teams on the ground doing assessments and are ready to help further in terms of resource mobilization if that's requested by the governments in both cases. Finally, very briefly on Bhutan, on the 21st of September there was an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.3 on the Richter scale which struck eastern Bhutan. 12 killed, 35 injured, more than 1,000 homes destroyed, in addition to many public buildings and schools, hospitals and government buildings. And although this is a relatively low death toll and damage, roster, if you like, compared to some of the other disasters I've just been talking about. It's a major catastrophe for such a small, landlocked and least developed country. So we had, again, an assessment team on the ground. They're there now. We expect to have the results of their assessment in a few days. The particular needs there are tents, particular winter weatherproofing tents as the winter approaches there, particularly as from next month. And finally, I should, as I say, just add for the sake of completeness, the huge floods in India, in Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh in particular, which are affecting, I think, 2 to 3 million people, causing very, very extensive damage, death and destruction. We have not been asked to help with that, but our support goes to the Government of India and the local authorities who are dealing with it. So let me stop there.